Hey folks, my name is Shay and this is RTFM, the show where I teach you how to play a game, because that's a viable career choice. And if you've watched some of my other stuff, you'll already know that there are a few things that I really like to see in board games. Namely, interesting stories, meaningful choices, and tight mechanics. So imagine my glee when I find a game that checks every single one of those boxes. Above and Below is a beautiful Euro-light game that I found last year and immediately fell in love with. Hopefully you will too. In this game, you play as a group of villagers settling a new land only to find a vast underground network of caverns. You'll have to balance basic economic game stuff like gathering resources, hiring villagers, and building shiny new huts with exploring these caverns and encountering what lies below. Now, what makes this game great is that every time you send your villagers off to explore, you'll have a quick random encounter with a little story to go along with it. And how you interact with that story will determine what you get out of it. I love this game, you're gonna love this game, let's dive in. Alright, you want to start a village. That's fine, it's good to have dreams. In this game, everyone gets a village and a hut to start. That hut's got some beds in it, enough for your first 3 people, which you'll take from the available starting villagers. As you can see, they all have different faces and personalities, hopes, and dreams, but the symbols on each villager fit them into one of 3 different types. So grab one of each and place them in your village on the ready area. If you're playing with 4 players, and let's say that we are, move the 2 villagers without a hammer symbol to the exhausted area instead. You'll also need some capital to get things started, so make sure to grab 7 coins. Next, we need to set up the reputation board. Exploring caves is dangerous work, and depending on how you conduct yourself, your reputation will go up or down, which will earn or cost you points at the end of the game. To track this, each player gets a cube matching the color on the top left of their village board, which starts at the torch on the track. This board is also a turn tracker, every turn moving the moon token down 1 space until it reaches the end, as well as a cider repository and a place to hire new villagers. Randomly draw 5 from the standard villagers deck and place 1 in each space. There are also 6 special villagers, which you can easily identify because they're objectively ridiculous, but also because each type of villager has a different back to it. Separate the special villagers and place them to the side. After that, it's time to set up shop. Obviously, if you want to make a village, you're going to need to build some more huts. There are 4 types of buildings to choose from: houses, outposts, star buildings, and key buildings. Houses and outposts have a deck of cards, so place them near each other and draw 4 random cards to start. There are 6 star buildings, and you'll place all of them out at the beginning of the game. As I'm sure you can see, these are expensive and powerful late game cards that you'll usually only get 1 or 2 of. Lastly, we have key buildings. A little less powerful than star buildings, but arguably more important. There are 9 different key buildings, but you won't play with all of them, so randomly select 4 and put the other 5 away. Oh, there's also this deck of cave cards. Place it face up like this somewhere near the outpost deck. And there's also going to be a lot of stuff in this game. So just separate them into piles and place them nearby. All said and done, your table should look a little like this. Well, I mean, the game will look like that. I don't know what your table looks like. Hope it's nice. Now we're almost done with setup. The last thing to do is pick a starting player. Give them this boring old first player card. Man, I got spoiled by Dead of Winter's knife token. And give other players a coin to mitigate the first player advantage. For 2 and 3 player games, each other player gets 1 extra coin. But for a 4 player game, only the 4th player, in clockwise order, gets a coin. Got it? Good. Let's start playing. There are 5 actions in this game, as well as a couple free actions. On your turn, you'll perform 1 action or pass. Then the player to your left does the same until everyone has passed. Once everyone has passed, the round is over. Move the round tracker down 1 space, pass the first player card to the left, and start it up again. You've probably played games like this before. The 5 regular actions all require you to put your villagers to work. You do this by sliding them from the ready area to the exhausted area. I'll tell you how to get them ready again real soon, but for now, let's get back to business. Each of these actions is represented by a symbol at the top of your village, and I'm going to go right to left because I think that makes more sense than how it is in the manual. First is labor. Slide 1 or more of your villagers over and then grab 1 coin for each villager you used. If you're the first player to use this action, you also get the cider token from the reputation board. Next is training. For this, you'll need a villager with a quill. Slide them over and then you can pay to train 1 of the villagers from the reputation board. Ryan North here looks pretty good, and he's the cheapest one, so let's choose him. When you tickle a new villager, you have to place them in the exhausted area. The special villagers I mentioned before won't be available to train. You'll have to find them while exploring. If you do, a section in the rulebook on page 12 will explain how they work. The other action that requires a specific type of villager is building. Slide 1 villager with a hammer to the exhausted area, and now you get to construct a building. As long as you have the money, you can always build an above ground building. Simply pay the cost on the top left of the card and place it next to your village. Then draw a new card to replace the one you took. If you want to buy an outpost, you'll first need to have an underground card in your village, which you get from exploring. Then, when you buy an outpost, place it on top of the underground card. Now, we haven't done any exploration yet, so let's just say we only bought that first building, which is fine because you can only build once per action anyway. Each of these cards have symbols on them, which give them certain benefits. This one, in particular, comes with resources, but some of them will give you points or abilities, and if you look on the back of the rulebook, it'll explain what they all do. As soon as you build this building, add 2 matching tokens to the card. The way you retrieve these tokens is with the next action, harvesting. To do this, slide as many villagers as you want to the exhausted area and take that many resource tokens from the buildings in your village. Now, technically, we've already exhausted all of our villagers, and we would need to pass, so I'm just going to pretend that we have all of our villagers back, and I hope you can forgive me. Now, let's get some of these delicious-looking conical pears. We can just get one if we want, but let's splurge and get both. So, we slide 2 villagers over and take both fruit tokens. Once we have a resource token, we can do 3 things with it. We can leave them where they are, we can place them on our advancement track at any time, which will help us get gold and victory points later, but once they're there, they can't be removed. Also, every time we place another pair, we have to place it on top of the first one that we played. Just something to keep in mind. And the last thing is, on our turn, we can place 1 token for sale. When an item is for sale, any player on their turn can try to buy it from you. They have to pay at least 3 coins, but the exact cost is determined by the seller. The only rule here is that you have to charge them cold hard cash, no trading of other items. Lastly, we have the most interesting action, and the reason why I hold this game in such high esteem, and that's exploring. You pick 2 or more villagers to go down below and have an adventure. Let's take our buddy Ryan and this guy down to the caves and see what we can find. First, we take the top card from the underground deck and place it next to our buildings. Then roll a die and match it to the number on the new top card of the deck. The player to your left will look through the encounter book, find the passage you rolled, and read it aloud. This will usually be followed by 2 options in bold, and their consequences in parentheses. At this point, the reader will list the options and the number following them. In this case, hide from the bat, explore 3, fight off the bat, explore 5 or 7, and bonus, +1 lantern per hammer. Now, what does that all mean? Well, each villager has the ability to explore, but some are better than others. For each villager that goes exploring, you'll get to roll 1 die, and depending on their skills and your rolls, you'll get a certain number of lanterns. Let's look at the villagers we sent on this expedition. The symbols at the top represent their search ability. Ryan here is great at searching. If you roll 1 or higher, you get 1 lantern, but if you get a 2 or higher, you get 2 lanterns. The other villager isn't quite as skilled, so in order to get just 1 lantern, you need to roll a 4 or higher. Now, if we go back to our current expedition, you'll remember we have a choice to make, each with a different number attached to it. We can hide from the bat, which only requires 3 lanterns, but with higher numbers usually comes a bigger reward. So let's try to fight it off. Because one of our villagers has a hammer, we get +1 on this option, so we're already doing okay. Next we roll dice. Ryan rolls a 3, so that's 2 more, and Hammer Guy manages to roll a 6, so we get his lantern as well. Now, you might have noticed a problem. We rolled as well as we possibly could, but still only have 4 lanterns, and since we needed at least 5 to fight off the bat, it seems like we're pretty well boned. However, during any search action, you have the option of exerting a villager. This gets you 1 free lantern per villager you exert, but when they come back from the expedition, instead of just being exhausted, they'll be injured and might take longer to recover. Let's exert Ryan to get that extra lantern, which means we have 5, just enough to meet the first reward for fighting off the bat. The reader will then tell you what that gets you. In this case, 2 coins, a fish, and +1 reputation. When you gain reputation, push your cube down 1 space on the reputation track. If you lose reputation, move it up instead. Now that you've done some searching, return your villagers to their homeland. And like I said before, Hammer Guy is exhausted from his trip, but because we exerted Ryan, put him on the injured section of the board. I'll talk about what that means exactly a little bit later. And really quickly, before we move on, I want to talk about the reroll ability that comes with certain buildings. You'll see this symbol sometimes, and if you build something with one of these, it will allow you 1 reroll per expedition. After you've rolled for each of your villagers, you can choose to reroll a number of dice equal to how many of that symbol you have in your village, but you may only reroll once per villager. So if you have 3 reroll symbols but only send out 2 villagers, you'll only get 2 rerolls. That was a hard sentence to say. Anyway, those are all of the main actions, but there are also 3 free actions you can take. I mentioned before that you can put a token up for sale or on your advancement track, that's 1. Buying a token that another player has put up for sale is 2. And lastly, if you don't like any of the cards in either the buildings or outpost row, you can pay 1 coin to discard all 4 cards from one row and draw 4 new ones. You can only do this once per turn, and it's impossible to do this to the key or star buildings. You can also choose not to take an action and pass instead. Once you pass, your turn will be skipped until everyone else has passed and the round ends. Alright, now that we've learned how to exhaust and hurt our villagers, let's give them a chance to recuperate. At the end of the round, there are a few odds and ends to take care of before starting the next day. First, we'll be looking at the reputation board. Start by moving the round marker down 1 space. If the moon is already at the last space and you can't move it any further, the game ends and you move on to scoring. Assuming that hasn't happened yet, you'll then add a cider token if there are none on the board. If no one took the cider this round, don't add another token. Then slide the available villagers to the left and add new ones to the remaining spaces. Going back to your village, it's time to rest your villagers. In order to use your villagers on the next turn, they need to be ready, not exhausted or injured. To that end, they'll need to get some shut-eye in these beds. For each bed in your village, you can move 1 villager 1 space to the left. We have 3 beds from our starting hut, so we could easily use them on our 3 starting villagers. Unfortunately, that leaves our buddy Ryan still injured, and since he's the best villager we've got, we're going to want him available next round. You can't use 2 beds on 1 person, but there is a way to fix him up good this round. Instead of fixing our other feathery villager, let's use the last bed to bring him to the exhausted area. Then, I can use the cider that we got earlier, this is what cider's for, to move 1 villager from exhausted to ready. And voila, he's ready to go. If you have multiple cider tokens, you can use as many as you want, but they only bring villagers from exhausted to ready. If you want to rest an injured villager without a bed, you'll need a potion. Then, after you've used the potion, you can use a bed or a cider to move them to the ready area if you want to. After you rest your villagers, it's time to collect income. Your allowance is determined mostly by your position on your advancement track, which I mentioned earlier. You'll always get at least 4 coins, but since we got that pear and fish earlier and we didn't sell them, let's put them on our advancement track. Now we'll get 6 coins instead of 4, which is great. Just remember that once those goods get put on the track, they're stuck there. You also gain 1 extra coin for each building with this symbol on it. Like I said before, every building has at least 1 symbol printed on it, and I could go through each one of them, but that'd be kind of tedious, and the manual does a pretty decent job of explaining them, so I don't really think I need to go into it. Okay, just 1 more, but only because it's part of this phase anyway. This symbol means you replenish the goods the same way you would for cider. If there's no token on the card, place 1 down. If there's already 1 there, leave it alone. Lastly, pass the first player card to the left and start the next round. Like I said earlier, if this was the end of the 7th round, the game is over and it's time to add up your points. There are a few ways to get points, so let's take a look at them all. First is the advancement track. You'll get points for each goods token on your advancement track. How much you gain is determined by which spaces the goods are on. In this case, we've got 3 goods on the first space, 1 on the second and third, and 2 on the fourth. So we would get 12 points total. Next, we should look at reputation. Fighting off that bat got us a little bit of a renown amongst the other villagers, but the other players are going to be pushing their way up and down the track too. Whoever has the best reputation, which puts you furthest down on the track, will score some extra points. As it shows you next to the track, the player in first place will get 5 points, second will get 3, third will get 2 points, and last place won't get any. Or, if you're playing with only 2 players, whoever is in first place gets 3 points and the other player gets nothing. Sucks to be them. If 2 players are tied, like they are here, you have to do a tiny bit of math. In this case, you would take the second and third place rewards, because first is clearly taken by us, good job, and find the average of the 2, rounding up. In this case, they would both get 3 points. You also gain or lose points if you are far enough up or down the track. Here, we would gain 3 points and blue would lose 1. Lastly, you'll get points from your buildings. Some will be worth a couple points on their own, but others, mostly the star buildings, will earn you points for each of the certain thing you own, like buildings, villagers, specific tokens, etc. These are pretty self-explanatory, so I'll let you figure them out on your own. I'll just make a point to quickly say that you don't own goods that are still on their building cards. They have to be harvested first. And that's it. Add up your points, and whoever has the most wins. If there's a tie, the richest player takes the victory. Still tied after that, then the player with the most villagers wins. Still tied after that, then it goes to whoever has the most buildings. And if you're still tied after that, well, the rules don't actually say who wins. Play again, I guess? So now you know how to play above and below. As always, if you have any questions about the game, please don't hesitate to ask. You can put them in the comments below, or you can tweet me at RTFM Show. I'll be posting an exclusive strategy video for Patreon backers next week, so if you're interested in that, or just feel like supporting the channel and joining my army of rules lawyers, head on over there and chip in a few bucks. After that, I'll also be posting some more stuff here about the game. Now, if you hit the bell icon, it'll notify you whenever I post something new. That's a cool thing. If you want it, I don't. I turn off notifications for every app I use, but I don't know what you like to do. As for the next game I teach